Your turn to ban. 5 seconds remaining.
This one is in the bag.
Quick as venom.
The battle begins! First blood!
I'm under attack.
Axe is impressed!
As you say. A plague on our foes. The world loses. I'll make up for lost time. With vim and venom. Watch this spot. A touch of venom. Vile advance. My royal ward. Ruination. The plague on our foes. It's in my nature.
Killing spree!
Envenomed. reputation. With vim and venom. Vile advance. It's not time yet. Sweet toxin. Plague our enemies. Sweet plague on our foes. Nothing touches the heart of my venom.
Your middle tower is under attack.
Vile advance. Yes. Venom's vengeance. Going. Yes. With vim and venom. Not yet. Plague our enemies. Quick as venom.
Your bottom tower is under attack. Axe is glad that your bottom tower is not Axe's problem. Your bottom tower is under attack.
It's not time yet.
Your bottom tower is under attack.
My enemy succumbs. Attack.
The enemy's middle tower has fallen. The enemy's middle tower has gone into superior form. Axe brought his thesaurus. Ha ha! Killing spree! Unstoppable! Double kill! Mega kill! Your top tower is being hacked to pieces. Your top tower has fallen. Axe was not involved.
Yes.
Your top tower is under attack.
Agitation.
Your middle tower is under attack. Dire structures are fortified.
It's not time yet.
Mega kill!
Caustic blow. Yes. Going. Concentrated venom. With vim and venom. Rewarded. Quickest venom. Pain of doom.
Wicked sick! Unstoppable!
The pain! My venom's restored. Yes.
Your top tower is being hacked to pieces! Godlike!
Vile. Have I tainted the world? I'm under attack.
Double kill!
Empty.
But they warned you not to speak with murderers.
Agitation.
The enemy has a bone to pick with your middle tower!
Yes. Impaled. Plague our enemies. Cursed antidote.
Tower, but Axe does not cry. Double kill!
See. Agitation.
Axe has seen ruins that look better than your bottom tower.
Attack! My venom glands engulfed. With vim and venom.
The enemy has a bone to pick with your middle tower. Double kill! Mega kill! Dire structures can take all the hurt Radiant cares to heap upon it.
Back from death's door.
Your middle tower is under attack.
And all the internet is gone and all the hard drive is gone. It's just like it's not back to square one, but we're going to be moved back like 100 years in time to rethink. It's a fascinating thing, and I'm sure it will happen at some point.
When I think of culture moving forward, because I'm a parapsychologist, I like to think that what we're engaged in is a kind of fusion of the scientific method with what people called at one time the rising tide of superstition or the irrational, trying to find the golden thread of truth in all of this new age. One of my friends calls it new age, to rhyme with sewage. And it strikes me that if culture is to move forward, it's kind of like the evolution of the human being. It's to own people, the vanguard of people, highly gifted clairvoyants and psychics. That's the birthright I tend to think of all people, ultimately. Although it's only recognized right now by, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3% of the culture.
Absolutely, and I think in our particular cultural sphere, I think it has to do a lot with the very negative imperialism of monotheism, where people who have real abilities to heal, for instance, or real abilities to see, natural shamans in a way, where they are suddenly just ridiculed from the time that they're children. Of course, they will go into hiding. They will become occultic, which can, of course, lead to more ostracizing maneuvers from the outside or like self-isolation in a way. So it has been a very bad culture for people who have I believe. So it's almost like it's a culture where you put the lid on the pot when it starts boiling, but that's actually when it should be just allowed to boil and cook some new dishes and see what's happening. But the culture as such has always been, now psychology is acceptable. That wasn't the case from the beginning 100 years ago, or slightly more. What we, as a joint term for psychology, although more things are opening up too. It's a vast field, of course, but some areas I think will be looked into in a serious, scientific way. I think telepathy and these different kinds of other kinds of interhuman communications, for instance. You only have to go to the communication of other, plants, for instance, how one society or group or again cluster of fern or these things that grow together in a way, how they can communicate via their roots. Like if one is uprooted, the other ones will know it, things like that. So I think it's not a matter of anymore. It's no longer a matter of just oppose progress for the sake of it, I mean, for religious reasons. I think scientists today are generally more open-minded, and I would suspect that it has to do with a general kind of openness that has to do with culture, influencing these things. I'm just trying to find an example. We can't relate to it. But there was a film recently about, I think it was called The Current War. It was about Edison and Tesla and Westinghouse, them working together and just deciding arbitrarily whether to have AC/DC or just AC. These things that it's so normal, but when you think of it, it's really kind of complex and very powerful things at work. And there were these three guys eating like little alpha males in the families in a way. And of course, they were all geniuses in their own ways. Those three singular people with a vision that really changed our lives in a similar ways. The people at the American universities who came up with this interconnectivity ideas that became the internet. They just tried LSD, and these things happen, and it happens when the time is right. The same thing why psychology popped up and actually did become quite accepted in a fairly short amount of time. That's going to keep us. I can see definitely a more liberal, more tolerant, a more open-minded attitude in the scientific communities, because you can criticize them for historically having looked to grants, having looked to patents, having looked at things that have to do with nuclear matters. But at the same time, society at large, the culture at large, has changed to now totally embody a deep-rooted anxiety about what the hell is going on. Is this a good thing? Is this a good trajectory? No, it's not. So you start the tank of steer in a different direction.
With regard to psychology, it seems to me that really the most influential voice in psychology over the last century has probably been that of Freud. And Freud, especially at the cultural level, less amongst academic psychologists, but what Freud introduced was the idea of the unconscious. And the Freudian unconscious is filled with things that we don't want to know about ourselves, that we have dark motives that we hide from ourselves because they're not culturally acceptable. And it seems to me, as long as we're hiding from ourselves, it's very difficult for clairvoyance to be around. I once had an opportunity to ask Arthur C. Clarke, the great science fiction writer who spoke at Berkeley when I was a student, and he had been making some very negative, hostile comments about Uri Geller, the Israeli psychic. So I asked him, I said, Mr. Clarke, do you believe in ESP? Because his novels are full of it. And he said to me, I thought this was very revealing. He said, no, I do not believe in ESP because I don't want anybody to read my mind.
Well, I think it's at least probably an honest answer, because who would want that? But at the same time, it could also, again, this two-edged sword thing, because if you could look into someone's mind, you could also have a deeper kind of communication that is not based on dishonesty. Those communications would need to be honest in a way, because you can't really formulate your own inner emotions and thoughts as being strategically deviant from real communication. But I just wanted to say also, you mentioned Clark, and that is very interesting. It was one very clear discernible way that culture affected or culture affected the larger culture. That's simply through science fiction in a way. Small, very bright science fiction writers, radical. They were, first in the pulp magazines. They were not regarded as literature. They were just entertainment for boys and girls. But many of these things, only a couple of decades later, was an actual reality. And, flying to the moon, who could have foreseen that? And most of those people who were instrumental in engineering that had been reading these sort of pulp magazines. And, so it's kind of funny, it's not the right word. It's interesting to see how this kind of lowbrow culture that has to do with, you growing up, how seminal those things can be. I recently read something by Joseph Campbell, a person I really admire, and he said that the thing that created timelessness for you when you grew up, that's where your own myth begins. Meaning that what could set you sort of out of the boundaries of time and space and sort of enchant you as a child, that's where your myth begins. And I think that's the power of culture also. You really affect kids and kids' minds more with entertainment in a way, or fiction, rather than with mechanical schooling.
I know when I was a young boy, I read comic books like most young children do. I read Superman was my hero, and though they become very inspirational, and I did have an opportunity to converse with Jeffrey Kreipel, a professor of religious studies, who noted that many of the great comic book writers were deeply interested in the occult.
Oh, I bet. Absolutely. And, Superman is also an interesting example to again tie it in with Anton LaVey. He said that, because people called LaVey like, pop Nietzsche. It was Nietzsche for an American audience in a way. And yeah. You could see that and any kind of philosophy of will, it comes from Schopenhauer, but it's filtered via Nietzsche. But LaVey said, funnily, because he was also very, very enamored with American pop culture. He grew up in the 30s and 40s, the sort of the golden age of American comics. And he said that, very, very truly, it's like without Nietzsche, there would be no Superman. And Superman was so quintessentially important for American kids and for American culture.
Now, speaking of Superman, I do recall many followers of Rudolf Steiner, about whom you've written, referred to him as the embodiment of the Nietzschean Übermensch, the idea that Steiner was so accomplished as a sculptor, as an architect, as a founder of an educational institution, as a founder of schools of medicine and biology, not to mention, of course, philosophy. They thought of him as the living embodiment of what Nietzsche had been writing about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. And of course, Steiner is a very, very interesting character. In the book, in the Occulture book, I have a chapter sort of comparing Aleister Crowley with Rudolf Steiner, because there are many similarities. They both concocted their own syntheses based on previous thing. Crowley had the Golden Dawn, Steiner had Theosophy, and yet they made something new and made movements out of it. And so there are many similarities, but to stay with a Nietzschean egregore in a way. It's so funny because Steiner was it's like 100% Apollonian, and Crowley was like 100% Dionysian. So they're almost like, I would not say twins, I wouldn't go that far, but they are very interesting as truly opposing poles, yet they carry the same trajectory, albeit in different ways. But the similarities are striking, but as types, they are so completely opposed, I would say.
Well, it's interesting because Steiner has left behind a very organized group of people who continue on in his teachings and so on. Crowley has left behind, I would say, a very disorganized following for the most part. Many diverse groups of pagans and occultists look up to Crowley in different ways, but they don't seem to embody any of the discipline and institutional culture that one finds amongst anthroposophists.
Mm-hmm. No, it's absolutely true. And I mean, I early on, like from my teens and on up until fairly recently, I was a big, I would say Crowley fan, but I was an actual, student and engaged in the philosophy, and I really ascribed to most of the things. And I found his best quality was this capacity for synthesis, like integrating things from the East and also taking some good parts from the Western tradition. But mainly it's the philosophy of Telema, of will. But then again, there's really nothing that these sort of Anglo-Saxon occultists have formulated that wasn't surpassed earlier on by Germans. You could go to, of course, Schopenhauer and Nietzsche and Goethe and all these superior minds, if I may say so. And I think also Crowley has many entries of attraction for young people. It's this the archetype of the rebel. Is this he did everything? He was a bad boy, and yet he was very suave and aristocratic. But also his life was pretty much a mess. He had a voluminous output, but there was no order. And then you can make virtue out of necessity and say that, well, that's just how he wanted to live his life. I don't think so. I think he would have preferred a much more, sophisticated lifestyle without pecuniary problems, I have to say. But there are other levels to this too. I think that for me, one of the turnoffs that actually made me lose interest in Crowley was, he was a child of his time, and there was this burgeoning of very great expanses and developments in the natural sciences, for instance. And at the same time, he came from so that's one thing, the empirical method. It was big in the zeitgeist. On the other hand, he came from a very strictly, Christian conservative background. So of course he rebelled and took "I'm the Great Beast," 666, whatever. But at the same time, he had that in his blood. It wasn't just the rebellion. He had that, Old Testament mind frame. And of course, what does he do when he gets, so turned on that he writes his epiphanic text? Well, he calls himself a prophet. And those things are, for me, two no-nos. And he summarized it well in something that is now like a decree, something that is looked upon with admiration. He said that, the method of science, the aim of religion, inherently meaning that he's the prophet of that religion. And for me, that's a double no. The empirical method is something that dates back to I don't know, the early 19th century, and it should have been left. And as for the religion, the aim of religion, I don't know, it's not a good association. Religion is mostly associated with oppression, imperialism, monotheism, and it doesn't really help if you just adopt an Egyptian pantheon and think that people will swallow that. It's not going to happen.
Well, if you reject the method of science and the aim of religion, what do you left with?
You're left with an unprejudiced, open mind with highly skilled, developed input, but mainly a tolerance, because since you don't have those strict limits and boundaries that you set upon yourself by adhering rigidly to a method, for instance. Because again, empiricism, what is it? It's the religious adherence to statistics. Because if you make 100 successful attempts in a laboratory, then you assume, well, we did 100, so thereby we are harnessing the truth based on statistics. Well, what if the 101st experiment topsy-turvies everything? Is that then just an anomaly, or is it a wrong application of the method? No, it's the same. So you can, from a strictly utilitarian perspective, of course you can do that, like clinical laboratory work in developing medicines and stuff like that. It's beautiful stuff. But in terms, to adhere to a materialistic empirical regime is to negate your own potential. It's to negate your own belief in the fact that your intuition has value. Because what if your intuition says, I'll go against the grain here, even though that group is successful and established, they claim one thing that I feel. My intuition tells me this is possible. And you could argue also that any kind of, communal movement, do they claim to have the truth or the falsehood? Of course, they always claim to have the truth. Let's stay in Nazi Germany. The main part of the people, not just the ruling elite, but many people subscribe to the theories, and then ergo, that would imply that there's some kind of empirical truth in what they're saying, simply because of the numbers. So in that sense, sometimes democracy is not the best way to run a country, but it's probably the best way we have. But what I'm saying is that at least as someone who's on a quest, you could call it spiritual or magical, whatever, you have to be true first and foremost to yourself. And if someone says something that you're supposed to believe in and you don't believe in it, then of course you should stick with your own regimen, your own attitude, your own results. And if you look at, I would say, interestingly enough, the history of science, many of the epiphanies that have, created pivotal changes have come from deeply irrational, unempirical methods that have then gone on to be very effective. But I usually say not to mock, but to provoke empiricists, what's the foundation of empiricism? And they will most often answer it, well, it's our method. But actually, the foundation of empiricism is, and this is what they don't like to hear, speculation. Because you cannot even postulate a theory if you don't have several speculations that can be gelled into something that can be taken into an experimental environment. So my experience is that they don't want to integrate into that question. Saying that the foundation of empiricism is speculation, pure and simple. I argue that it is.
I want to shift gears a little bit with you. Earlier, you talked about the distinction between the Anglo-Saxon world and the Germanic culture. And you are in Stockholm right now. I'm in Albuquerque. I'm totally immersed in Anglo-Saxon culture, but you are in a world where you're really close to both of them. You're obviously very fluent in English, but I'm going to assume, maybe wrongly, that your first language is probably Swedish.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
You have a perspective on the Anglo-Saxon world from the outside than I have. I've always been on the inside.
Yes, absolutely. But then again, you have this thing which you could, not a matter of accepting it or not, it's just there. You have a huge influx here as well as in the rest of the world, actually, of American cultural imperialism. And I remember it affected me in very good ways. I mean, that's why I basically, love a lot of American culture, pop culture and sort of B-movies and sort of the slightly discarded thing. But that's what I grew up with. Because the fact that on Swedish TV, when I grew up, there were only 2 channels, and anything that was broadcast was usually stuff from England, from the UK, but also a lot of American films, of course, and they were not dubbed. They were with subtitles. So Swedish kids learned English really quickly, and then from age 9 or 10 in school. So that's one part of it. But the other part is, of course, the power of American cultural imperialism. With movies, with music, we are immersed in it whether we want it or not. I think that's never going to go away, and it may be irrevocable. I'm not saying that it has to be revoked. I don't think it's possible. But what we can see now with the internet is that it's even more predominant in a way, because kids watch YouTube and they watch, American reality shows, and it's just... I don't know. I kind of both love and hate that expression, reality shows, because it's a show of fiction, but it's supposed to be about reality, which of course is not everybody's reality. It's just a certain number of perhaps not so intelligent people. But concerning the Germanic, if you think back as a Swedish person, for instance, where our culture, what are the roots, what are the sources, and there's a lot of influx, like in our language, for instance, we have a lot of English words, but we also, of course, it's a Germanic language, but we also have time. So hopefully it's a mix, and I think also the current, we have a monarchy, we have a king, but it's not really stemming from a Swedish bloodline. It was like a political thing that happened in the early 19th century, where Napoleon basically said, you go and be king over Sweden, and that's what happened, and that family still they're doing a pretty good job, so I'm not complaining. But it's interesting to see that it's not ancient history. Our world in Sweden has been shaped by very strong forces in history, and we have always retained a very diplomatic approach. Like officially we're neutral, for instance, in terms of politics. We have not been in a war for over 200 years. Things like that is kind of unheard of, but it gives us a kind of a character trait where we are both alone, but we're also part of everything, like good diplomats in a way. We can go into many different environments and converse, and maybe be sly, maybe be strategic, maybe stay out of trouble, but it's based on the fact that there has always been input, mainly from the European main hubs, Germany, France, and England. Those have defined our culture. And then I would say during the 20th century, it was this wave, this tsunami coming from America, and sort of engulfed in all of it.
One of the areas of interest of our viewers is the whole question of aliens from outer space. And amongst the various aliens people talk about are they call them the mantids, like giant insects. There are the Greys, and then there are the Nordics. So the Nordics are tall with blue eyes and blonde hair, and they're all sort of the most elevated of the alien beings. I think of them as sort of egregores, but because they're called Nordics, obviously there seems to be some connection there with the Nordic countries. What are your thoughts about that?
There were even some Swedish scientists, like in the, let's see, 7th century, who claimed that Atlantis was basically situated in Sweden, and all of these meteor lakes that we have, that's something came down into that lake in the middle of Sweden. So, but this is just like speculation, and bordering on not even mythology, but bordering on certain person's fantasies. You could also see it very clearly when the Ariosophists came to cultural power first in Austria and then Germany, and how that seeped into politics and became a whole thing, this yearning for the Nordic in a way. And it's so funny too, because it does exist still exists in real life. And I'm not talking specifically about us being aliens, but I'm talking, for instance, about Germans have this incredibly romantic view of Sweden. Sweden in particular, I would say, more so than Denmark and Norway. And I don't know why. It's a big thing for Germans to have a Swedish summer house. Scandinavians are really big on their summer houses, and they're all kind of homogeneous. They're bad with white windows, and it's just very, very for a long time. And it's not a politicized thing, but they've always had this kind of idealized view of Sweden, and I think that was very clear during during the Nazi era too, for mostly for bad, of course. But who knows? We were never invaded, and I'm sure there were many political strategies going on, and maybe some shady deals. I don't know, but I mean, for instance, Norway was invaded, Denmark was invaded, but Sweden wasn't. So either very skillful diplomacy or simply a kind of respect for us that we couldn't explain at the time, so still can't. So I sure about the Nordic aliens. So sometimes I feel alienated, but that's a completely different thing. On that topic, though, itself is a study why so many of the alien cultures, or I would say maybe even subcultures, people adhere, almost like in fiction, to a certain type, like you say, like they're hominoids, or they're Nordics, or they're different kinds of, what do you call them, arachnid? It's something that with insects.
Mantids, and there's the reptilians. And
to connect things with what's going on today also. There is alien invasion going on all the time, but it's not in that kind of life form. This bacteria coming into our atmosphere, and this virus is coming into our atmosphere from space. And how they take on new forms and how they mutate, that could actually be something that has to do with what's going on today with pandemics and stuff, because you can try to isolate and say that, it was this fish market or animal market in Wuhan. Isolate billions of people down to this point in time and space. It's I don't know. But then again, how can you trace the origins of viruses in general? It's an established fact. Things seep into our atmosphere, but that's not very good. We are being invaded by aliens, but they're not really anthropomorphic.
yeah, I've heard the same thing being said about psychedelic mushroom spores. For example.
Yeah. So I love, and let's just accept that as theory for now. But I love that because that's exactly, why would someone want to come here, for instance? Well, it could be to actually from our exploit the planet and then leave again. That would be from a slightly more, realistic point of view, maybe to help us, guide us. I mean, that's how ancient religious cultures have left behind documentation too of visitations and having big event technologies and stuff like that. But, I personally love the idea, the fact that spores or fungi, talking about this from a Lovecraftian perspective. I'm talking more of it from psychedelics as being a mind opener, in the sense, hey, people, it's time to wake up and see things in a more holistic light. Because if you sort of destroy your habitat, this planet, it will disturb a balance on the cosmic scale also. We are so narrow-minded. We're anthropocentric, not even it's earth-centric. It's only anthropocentric, whereas, of course, if something really bad happens and sort of we lose, ecological balance and there's a new ice age, of course that affects the rest of at least our ecosystem. And there may be, or there may be not, forces that like that, or don't like that, and say that, hey, people wake up. So, well, since we can't speak any of the Earth languages, and if we show up in our spacecraft, they would just kill us, let's give them some psychedelic spores. But hope for that.
Well, that's a wonderful note to end on, Carl. I love this conversation. Keep going for a long time. We could talk about practically anything, and you will have interesting things to say. So I want to thank you for being with me. This has been a delight, and I look forward to future conversations with you.
Yeah, me too, Jeffrey. Thank you very much. It's been great, and we'll just keep the flame burning, as Prometheus would say.
Beautiful. And for those of you watching, thank you for being with us.
With vim and venom. Vile advance. A touch of venom.
Presented by the California Institute for Human Science, a fully accredited university offering distant learning graduate degrees that focus on body and spirit. The topics that we cover here, we are particularly excited to announce new emphasizing parapsychology and the paranormal. Visit their website,
Killing spree.
Years of exploring technologies now available on
A touch of venom. Impaled. My venom flows. Yes.
Thinking aloud.
Attack.
Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Michelin.
guest host Emily Badness, filling in for Jeffrey Mishlove. The topic today is meaning and coincidences. Dr. Bernard Beitman about previous time. University of Virginia, chair of the Department of Psychiatry, University of Missouri, Columbia. Psychiatric analysis that focus on the founder of the Coincidence Initiative, cultivating worldwide coincidences, synchronicity, and serendipity. He is also the host of the podcast Connecting with Coincidence. He is author of dozens of books, including Connecting with Coincidence, The New Science of Using Synchronicity and Serendipity in Your Life, and Meaningful Coincidences, How and Why Synchronicity and Serendipity Happen. Dr. Beitman is based in Charlottesville, Virginia, and now I'll switch over to the internet video. Welcome, Bernie. It's such a pleasure to have you back with us on New Thinking Aloud today.
Thank you very much, Emmy. It's great to be here. I'm glad we've had our previous conversations too.
You have been experiencing coincidences and synchronicity all the way back to the time you were 9 years old. Can you share how you got into studying this and even conducting formal research on coincidences and synchronicities?
Yeah, I was a boy with a dog named Snapper, and my parents let me name him. And I loved that dog. I mean, I was a lonely boy, and he was the best friend I ever had. And we did stuff together. And I came home one day from school. I was about 8 or 9, and riding on my bike.
Think is what can be thought. What we say is what can be said. What and where is that reality we're supposed to be thinking and speaking about? Is there such a reality? Can we encounter anything that is not the product of thinking and language? Asking these very questions is a product of thinking and language. If there is a real reality beyond mental representations, that reality must be, well, unrepresentable. The best we can do, perhaps, is remain silent about it, as Wittgenstein recommends, and accept our existence in a world of representations. Well, not quite. Enter Jiddu Krishnamurti.
The white slave trade, and Lieutenant Presley O'Bannon's mission. This event stopped the expansion of the Barbary pirate kidnapping operations into northern Europe and halted the pirates from attacking American ships following the peace treaty. They also liberated many Americans and Europeans being held captive, mostly for ransoms. The Second Barbary War of 1815 to 1816 ended after an attack by the British and Dutch in 1816, which saw more than 4,000 Christian slaves being liberated, and the power of the Barbary pirates was finally broken. So basically, John Ward was effectively the godfather of the Barbary maritime slave trade, greatly expanding their capabilities. He was one of the few pirates who lived a long life, kept his wealth, and escaped the bloody end that met most pirates. He was as skilled at diplomacy as he was at sea warfare, but the legend of John Ward is still filled with gaps and full of mystery. When most of the famous pirates in history ended at the end of a noose or died on the ocean, Ward retired in wealth and luxury, and few people today even know of him. Ward had transformed and reinvented himself, growing up a poor, illiterate fisherman and lowly English sailor into a highly skilled and feared Muslim pirate. It was said that he mastered reading and writing several languages, including Arabic. Modern day theorists suggest that he was the inspiration for the character of Captain Jack Sparrow. It is also believed that he inspired Daniel Defoe's and Lord Byron's tales of romanticized pirates. But John Ward wasn't just a pirate. He was a chameleon, navigating religion, politics, and power in an age when few survived the sea. And he did what no pirate was supposed to do. He won. Thank you for watching this episode of Forgotten History. If you like what you saw, please click like, share, and subscribe. And if you would like to assist with the ever-increasing cost of production, please consider becoming a
In
It is not speculation. Every detail in this episode comes directly from declassified U.S. government documents. In April of 1961, the United States launched a secret invasion of Cuba. It was supposed to be quick, surgical, quiet, but instead, one of the greatest foreign policies of 1,400 CIA fact-checkers stormed the beaches of the Bay of Pigs. After the fortress surrendered, the plan had been to overthrow Fidel Castro. What America got instead was a global embarrassment. Once that followed, something came inside the United States. Quickly, in close quarters, military leaders believed the only way forward was still reeling. Failed invasion, public support wasn't guaranteed. That's when a new plan was drafted. One that would guarantee outrage. One that would rally the nation. One that, if approved, would cross a line no republic could obtain. A plan that, if executed, would have killed innocent Americans on American soil. Just as the plan called for hijack.
On the hunt. By the moon.
Oh, bottom forward. Kind of bad.
By the moon. Forward. I go. To battle. A good path. I serve. On the The tide moves. A good path. Agreed. I could eat a cry surge.
Dominate! Your middle tower is under attack! Rally the troops and get over
By
there!
the moon. To battle. Tide moves. On the hunt. Forward. A good Agreed. You swim against. I'm under attack. The tide moves. By the moon. No mana. On the hunt. Battle. I hunt you down. I surge.
Denied.
The tide moves. I go. A good path. Forward.
Nice, nice.
Agreed. I hunt. I serve. I'm not ready. Every time.
Never see this coming.
On the hunt. By the moon. By the moon. The tide moves. On the hunt. Now you're fish.
Bombings, state funerals, even a fake airline. None of it was coming from a foreign enemy, mean from the Pentagon. This wasn't a rogue idea scribbled on napkin. This was signed off by the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Called it Operation Northern. Why would the U.S. military plan a false flag terror attack on its own people? What does it say? Find our leaders are willing to cross when they think no one's watching. Let's try and find out. Hello, over.
It's 6 feet down.
Domination!
Red tide comes to battle. A good path. On the hunt. I surge. To battle.
Kan ni ta den? Kan
And
den också?
By the moon.
Dire structures are fortified.
Won't help. In with the tide.
They're trying to knock down your middle.
Go
go
fight.
fights.
I go.
It wasn't just a military disaster, it was a psychological one. CIA was a thought. Administration, the army. Most Americans didn't realize that President John F. Kennedy had only been in office for 3 months when the invasion began. He hadn't created the plan, he had inherited. Khamenei's CIA scheme, much under the Eisenhower administration. Raising motion, took the oath of office. Invasion had been
Go.
In reality, 144 worldwide.
Go.
Fell apart for real. That's no good. Given the green light, failure landed squarely into these shoulders. Joint Chiefs of Staff, America's top military leaders, began pushing for something far more aggressive. They didn't want another half-baked mission. They wanted a full-scale invasion of Cuba. There was a problem. The American people weren't interested in Korea. Without public outrage, there could be no political mandate for military action.
I go.
Regeneration.
My prey. Forward. Running won't help. On the hunt. To battle.
They're trying to knock down your middle tower. Sentry what? Oh, you're some kind of saint or something.
My moon comes round again. Kind so. Forward. By the moon. I go. I'm under attack.
Thank you, my beauties.
Monster kill! Double kill! Your bottom tower is under attack.
Unless we're talking war. It's not time. By the moon.
Dire's courier has been killed.
My goal now. On the hunt. Forward.
Godlike!
The Jasper Circle couldn't do it better.
Dire's putting up a barricade. The bottom tower is under attack.
Take. The tide moves.
Killing spree! Double kill! Dominate! Triple kill! Your top tower is under attack! You better puff on over to your bottom tower. His middle tower has
I
fallen.
rise again from the deeps.
Double damage. My double.
Ooh, your bottom tower is kind of bad. Radiant structures are fortified.
Good path.
Are you even watching your top tower? Radiant
Fortified destructions.
Pretty
Good move if you ask me.
Go.
Killing spree!
I go.
Dominate! Double kill!
To battle. The tide moves. To tide me over.
Structures are fortified.
The enemy's top tower is falling.
By the moon. On the hunt. Not yet.
Killing spree! Radiant's courier has been killing spree! Double kill!
I lead. I'm under attack.
Best thing about the enemy's top tower is it's gone. Enemy's middle tower just
Turned into a pile of rocks.
You're sunk. To battle. By the moon. I serve. That cuts no ice with me.
mega kill!
They got a bargain when they hired me.
Go. Agreed. A good path. Giant atoms in the water. On the hunt. The tide moves. I'm under attack. To battle. My life ebbs.
If your mid tower could talk, it'd be pretty magic.
By the moon.
Double kill! Structures are fortified.
I hunt you down.
Good,
Good.
good
Good.
honor.
Radiant's courier
Here is dead.
I wonder
Wonder
what
what
you got.
I rise again from the deeps.
Killing spree! Golden falls! So polite! Dominate!
A good work.
Top tower's under attack. This is one of the things in the back. The top tower has fallen!
I surge.
The top tower needs some help.
I could eat a manatee. Won't help. I go. Drums in the water. No escape.
Your middle tower is
Or is that
under attack.
Surge. To battle.
Killing spree! Oh, you're dead. What a surprise.
On the hunt. Invisibility. With the fishes.
Killing spree! Dominate! Ultra Mega kill! Your middle tower has fallen. Your middle tower's under attack. Radiant structures are fortified. If your mid tower could talk, it'd be pretty mad at you. You and a couple of friends could probably stop that. You got one less middle tower now, by the way.
I go. The tide moves. By the moon. You hang high from the top.
Manta, void.
Your middle barracks are looking shaky.
Wow. Wow.
Your middle barracks is falling.
Really crazy, man.
If you wanted your middle barracks to not fall, you're doing a structure report. Killing spree! Triple kill!
In with the tide.
Hey, welcome back.
Swim against the tide. On the hunt. A good path. I'm a walrus. The tide moves. It's not far.
What is?
On the hunt. Yours. By the moon. I'm under attack. To battle. Agreed. By the moon. The tide moves. On the hunt. I go.
Regeneration.
A good path. I'm hungry enough to eat a mecha. I could take a shot.
Better poof on over to your bottom tower.
Battle. It's not time. Forward.
Death's bounty.
By the moon. A good path.
Killing spree!
Cast upon the tides.
When a new idea emerged. Not one based on intelligence or diplomacy, but on manipulation. If they couldn't win the hearts and minds honestly, they'd manufacture the crisis themselves. And in March of 1962, the U.S. Department of Defense submitted a proposal that would send shockwaves through history. The public would learn about it for another 35 years. The proposal was called Operation Northwoods. It came directly from the Joint Chiefs of Staff, America's highest ranking military brass. It wasn't just one bad idea. A checklist of chaos. The plan outlined a series of false flag operations, acts that would appear to be carried out by Cuba, but were actually staged by the U.S. government. The goal? Create a public justification for a full-scale military invasion. Some of the suggestions read like scenes from a dystopian screenplay. They included fake hijackings of commercial airlines blamed on Cuban agents, bombings in Miami, Washington, and even inside U.S. military installations. A drone airliner, needed to match a real passenger flight, would be remotely destroyed over Cuban waters. A list of fake victims. U.S. Navy faking Cuban sabotage, staging a deadly riot among Cuban exiles in Florida, supposedly incited by Castro's agents. Buildings exploded. For American civilians to generate a helpful wave of indignation across the country. These weren't theoretical suggestions buried in the footnotes. They were written in plain language, deliberate, cold, methodical. Most disturbing of all, he's thrown the
surge. I surge. Gold for me. No escape. Running won't help. To battle. Agreed. On the hunt. I hunt. A good. Time moves.
What?
Maybe
Stop!
stop.